before the holidays, MIAA Commissioner Mike Racy, nice enough to join me here for one last conversation before the new year. Sir, it's coming pretty quickly here, the end of the calendar year, and chance to kind of spend some time with family and recharge, as we were talking about off the air too.
Yeah, it's a fun time of the season, Chris. It seems like just yesterday we were hanging out at Football Media Day in July, and here we are, and it's almost Christmas, and we're almost halfway through the basketball season, and time flies, but it's a fun time now to really step back and appreciate the ones we love, and be with family and friends, and celebrate Hanukkah, Christmas, the holiday season, whatever your faith allows you to do, and then we'll regroup after the first of the year and head down the home stretch for basketball towards the MIAA championship.
A lot to get to later on when we get back from the holiday break and everything, but this conversation I think is a good chance to kind of look back on a few things, and we'll start with the Division II football championship. If you're a fan of Division II football, you saw how that kind of played out with Ferris State winning back-to-back now national championships. And this one, like the last one, in decisive fashion. They beat Colorado Mines over the weekend on Saturday, and that one was never really in doubt, it really felt like. Ferris State kind of rolled through, and if you saw them in Super Region 3, it wasn't an easy way to get out of Super Region 3. Once they started rolling, Ferris State was, well, they did what we've seen them do before.
Yeah, Chris, I'm growing increasingly concerned in our high profile, high visibility sports in Division II, and those would be, obviously the contests that we put on national television to help promote the division's brand, in front of prospective student athletes and parents and fans of our schools and potential donors and sponsors and supporters. In these national television games, I don't think we're doing a good job of showcasing the competitiveness in our division. We're not. We're certainly not putting the best schools in front of a national TV audience to see a great competitive game. And I don't think it's any secret, the four best football teams this year were all in the same region. The four best football teams, I think, met during the second round of the NCAA Division II playoffs. And, we've seen some blowouts at men's basketball or women's basketball in the championship game. And I think in a previous podcast, I shared with you my plan to improve basketball, men's and women's, is to go to a format that's focused on 4 instead of 8. Mm-hmm. Let's move away from 8-team regions and an Elite 8, and we need to be into sub-regionals, and we need to be moving towards a men's Final Four and a women's Final Four. And I think that gives us a better chance in a national television game to have a pretty good matchup. But football, it is a high profile, high visibility sport in our division. We want to do everything we can to showcase how great Division II is, and I just worry that we're not doing that right now. I know a lot of people will say, well, we've got a great model. It's how we've always done it. There's no way to compare one region to the other. There's no way to really compare every year the strength of one conference against another. And I say we need to figure it out. College athletics is changing. The expectations that people have of how we present college athletics and the way that we determine champions, I think, is changing. And I think it's time that we put a bunch of people in a room and figure this thing out. So we do have very competitive national championship brackets and very competitive national championship games.
We've seen Super Region 3 kind of be the dominant force or the teams from the GLIAC and the MIAA has kind of been the high points for the last couple of years. I mean, Ferris State, obviously, the last 2 years, and then 2015-16 was Northwest, and they had the 2013 one too. But how do you go about changing this in a way to where is it more like what the NAIA does, where they have, their seedings through there, or what do you think is a way that Division II can get to the point to where we don't have this problem where the quote unquote national championship game may happen in the second round of the Super Region 3 playoffs, where the best matchup of the whole year sitting right there.
Yeah, well, I think we need to take a look at the regional alignments for sure. I think within a couple of years, maybe sooner than that, we're going to have a 16th conference sponsoring Division II football. It's going to probably be out east, and it's going to mean that we're going to have to reconfigure, the regional alignments in Division II, and I think we need to be, bold enough to say that, playoff history and how well teams have done in the national championship needs to play a part in where we place schools. There are very fine lines that we can draw geographically, where the MIAA goes, where the GLIAC goes, where the Gulf South goes, where the Northern Sun Conference goes, where the Lone Star Conference is. I think we need to work really hard to make sure that we do everything we can to make those conferences be in different regions to the extent we can. Now, I name more than 4, so it's gonna mean that a couple of those conferences are going to have to match up against each other. But we need to take a look at that. We need to be willing to say, these conferences have historically won national championships, competed well in the playoffs, invest a lot of money in facilities, in coaching, in recruiting, have great attendance. Their communities are supportive. They draw well, whether it's in person or on their network broadcasts. Those are factors that need to be considered with what we do in football. So I think that's a great place to start. I think there are tools that the football committee has that allows them to move some schools out of region, that allows them to avoid some of these early round conference matchups. I think we need to prioritize that. I think we need to avoid at whatever cost schools from the same conference playing each other in the first round of the playoffs. I think that just needs to be a rule in Division II, that's not going to happen. That is not a championship experience for student athletes to go and play someone that they've already played as a conference matchup. So those are some of the things I think that help improve. But, I think we also need to think about, maybe we rebracket, after the first weekend and take a look at, who survived these regional matchups. And then maybe a bracket after week 1 is not necessarily tied to regional alignment or geography. I'm talking about things that cost money, and we're going to have to put more money into championship expenses. Those need to be the priorities in the division. There's a lot of money that Division II gets from the NCAA basketball championship. Those resources continue to increase. And I think that we need to continue to prioritize expenses that we put towards women's basketball, men's basketball, the football championship, the volleyball championship, softball, baseball, championships where we do have some sort of a television presence, Chris.
I don't know if this would fall into that too, but should there be more attention paid to the coaches poll and stuff like that, where you have the Massey ratings too when it comes to football, or are those two different things that some will like, some won't, and the coaches poll is too biased. I don't know if that's where those arguments can be made on using those type of things, because when you look at the coaches poll, it doesn't line up with the regions at all either.
No, and the coaches poll, I dismiss that because there is a lot of bias of coaches voting for programs they're familiar with or trying to help their institution. You look at the Massey ratings, it's got 6 MIAA schools in the top 13. Pitt State at number 2, Northwest Missouri State at number 4. A lot of people discount the Massey ratings. And, if there's a better rating system or power ranking system out there, let's use it. Let's find it. Let's make sure it understands Division II and that we find a way to use it as a tool in the ratings or the selections. I certainly think that the Massey ratings tells us some things about strength of conference, strength of region. And those are things that need to be taken into consideration. So whether it's the Massey ratings or some other rating system, I do think that that's probably a good idea, Chris, of a tool that needs to be used as we think about selections for playoffs.
Other topic we're going to tackle today, the MIAA governance meeting. You guys just had that just not too long ago. Several topics you guys went over. I don't know where you want to start, but I'll give you the floor, and here we go.
Well, Chris, last Monday and Tuesday, we had our meetings here in Kansas City. These are our annual winter meetings before Christmas break. We try to get our ADs, our senior woman administrators, and our faculty athletic representatives from every one of our schools together to meet and to consider issues and to make recommendations, and that the presidents get to look at when they get together in San Antonio at the NCAA convention. I'll start, Chris, with a topic that will be released, I think it's this afternoon on the MIAA website, an update on the work of our Constitution Task Force. That group has completed its work. They've submitted their final report. I'm really pleased with the work of that group. It was co-chaired by Elizabeth Kennedy, the president at Missouri Western, and John Mosley, the president at Lincoln. And we had a number of meetings in the spring and summer and early fall. And it's really going to allow us to have, I think, a more responsive, nimble, flexible governance structure to be able to quickly respond to issues. We'll have an enhanced voice for our student athletes, consistent with what we've seen as far as the NCAA constitutional changes. And it's a new model that provides a greater delegation of authority on really sport administrative type issues to our athletic directors and our senior women administrators. It allows our presidents to be with their agenda a little more strategic, a little more big picture, a little more focused on what's over the horizon for the MIAA and based on NCAA issues. So I think it allows our presidents when they get together to be a little more proactive in what the agenda is for the MIAA, and it helps our ADs and SWAs be able to come together and solve issues pretty quickly. A couple of examples that we're dealing with right now, and those were discussed this past week, Chris, is we currently have an intra-conference transfer rule. It prohibits someone to be recruited to one of our MIAA schools and be able to transfer to another MIAA school and be immediately eligible. There are exceptions to that related to family issues, monetary issues, academic reasons. But we really don't want a school that's invested in a student athlete, bringing him or her to campus and and providing them with that athletic growth and development to then have someone leave and move on to another school within the conference, just purely for athletic reasons. So we continue to look at that. We continue to monitor it. We had our attorneys in with us. They monitor that as well. We're going to do some things, I think, related to some documentation and what our student athletes are going to be looking at as they start their enrollment at school. But our attorneys feel that this is still a rule that makes sense in the MIAA, and that certainly our coaches and administrators continue to support. Another thing that we looked at, Chris, this past week was issues related to transgender student athletes. There's a lot of activity on this front at the state houses in some of our states, Oklahoma and Missouri, to name two. And we just wanted to make sure that if we do have a transgender student athlete that's transitioning from their birth sex, that if they are eligible to compete in an MIAA championship, what are some of the things in place that we want to make sure are allowing those competitions to be fair and equitable. And so we're borrowing some of the testosterone documentation and testing language from the NCAA that will also be applicable to MIAA championships. And the transgender and the transfer issue, those will be discussed again when our presidents get together here in a few weeks, Chris.
A couple other things that you sent my way from the governance is MIAA instant replay for football. Obviously, instant replay is a big focus of sports, and we've seen it in the NFL the last couple of weeks too, that everybody gets to see replay. And now this year, MIAA got to use it. I guess, what were your overall thoughts on how that went?
Very positive, and that was really the consensus of our athletic directors, that it was a good year. We had 6 student athletes that would have been removed from the game for targeting, where those calls were reversed after looking at them on replay, and they were allowed to continue to compete. We had a number of calls that were challenged, and about half of them did get reversed on review. Some of them very big plays, big moments in the game. A lot of people feel like our officials maybe are reluctant to have replay, that they somehow feel intimidated, or that it's a judgment on their work, and not the case. Really, our officials are some of the biggest fans of replay. It's technology and a tool that helps them get a call right. Many of these calls are very quick, based on position, where you're at, what you see, the speed of the game, and so if we have technology that's going to help us get it right, we need to use it, and that was really the consensus this past meeting. So, we're in a wait and see approach with the NCAA. We've shared everything that we did from this year as far as the experiment. And we're hoping in the next month or two, we hear from the NCAA on whether or not this is going to be permitted in Division II moving forward, as the NCAA or the MIAA tested it. And if that's the case, we're back on board next year with having instant replay at our MIAA games.
One other topic to get to from the governance meetings. Thought we were maybe past this a little bit. Maybe I was a little bit naive in that part, but COVID-19 rescheduling. Missouri Western men's basketball had a couple of games had to be rescheduled. What are you guys looking at on that front? Because it's been a few years since we had the pandemic, I guess, at its height, but now we still see COVID-19, hitting teams and causing postponements too.
Yeah, and it could at least the rest of the basketball season be something that we're trying to manage and monitor. I think we had one team that got hit with COVID in volleyball. We've already had 2 postponements on the men's basketball side. So it is something that we're continuing to monitor, and our current policies, Chris, and what we're doing with the 2 games in men's basketball, they'll be rescheduled, and it's going to cause a couple of teams that are going to have to make pretty lengthy trips again for their men's basketball team, additional expense. And that's really where we focused our attention this past week in talking about COVID, that maybe, moving forward, 3 years after this started, that maybe we're in a new phase, and maybe the choices are that if your team, because of institutional policy, can't play a game because of COVID, the 3 options would be that we just consider that game a forfeit, and the team that has COVID is going to take a loss, or the team that has COVID that was supposed to host a game would now go on the road. So that, that would be their expense. Or they could still host that game, but they're going to pay the transportation expenses for the teams that got impacted by the postponement. So, we've got a basketball makeup games where Missouri Western needs to reschedule with both Kearney and Hayes, and Western then would have 3 options. If this new policy would go into effect, they could just decide that we'll forfeit and we'll take the loss. They would actually go on the road instead of hosting, and they would travel out to Kearney and Hayes, or they would have Kearney and Hayes both still come to Missouri Western, but they would incur those expenses. So I don't know how the presidents are going to react to that. They may just stay status quo, at least for the rest of the basketball season, and that we, continue to do everything we can to make up games. We've been pretty good at that the last couple of years. We haven't missed a game the last 2 years, but I think our ADs are just wondering if we're in a different phase, in a different place, and we need to look at this a little differently than we have in the past. So it'll be an interesting discussion when our presidents get together in January.
Last question, I'll get you out of here. What's your favorite part of the holidays?
It's just being with family and friends. Especially during the academic year, I feel I miss out on a lot, especially with my extended family. I don't necessarily get to go to all of those things that I would like to go to, and the holidays gives me a chance to really connect with them, and I guess as I get older, I appreciate those moments even more, especially now that I have 3 kids and they're all away at college or have started their careers, and having them back home. I also, this past Friday, Chris, we spent some time with our MIAA staff at a holiday lunch and a retreat, and we did some mini golf, indoor mini golf as an activity, and that's fun when you take time with staff to laugh and have some good times, and just really to appreciate each other. I think we have a pretty good team here in the MIAA office, and it's nice to take a day or an afternoon and just appreciate being around each other and getting to work with each other.
And if you need a laugh, I think the picture of Marshall Fay jumping up with the title belt's out there on Twitter too. So that's out
right.
From Friday.
Yeah, that's right. We'll have to bring Marshall on a future podcast in his MIAA office. Undisputed championship belt that he won this past Friday. It was quite a time, and I'm hoping that Marshall found some places this weekend, maybe that he wore that belt, maybe the grocery store or some other activities. But yeah, it was a lot of fun on Friday.
It's probably sitting on his desk right now, or he's holding it. One of the two.
That's right.
NCAA Commissioner Mike Racy, thank you as always. Have a great rest of your week and have a happy holidays too.
You too. Thank you, Chris.